Sparing your valuable time today. My name is Terry Walton. I sit within our Applications Unlimited team, supporting customers absolutely like you that are running on-premise applications. Apologies if my shirt's coming across a bit wavy on the video. If the bandwidth gets a bit funny, I'll turn it off, or I don't know how that's appearing on your screen. Again, today we really want to talk about some of the sort of key highlights from the EBS perspective in terms of the strategy. We'll touch on specifically some of those elements around the HCM side as well. So Oracle Safe Harbor Statement, there's actually nothing in this deck which is future roadmap. We'll talk about some of the newer features in some of the later versions, but again, obviously the Oracle slides have to have this in there. So today we'll talk, say at a fairly fast pace and a high level around things like the Oracle overall strategy, again, the ongoing investments that we're making within the on-premise applications and specifically Business Suite, touch on some of those new features and functions, and there's a few slides at the end where you can follow up and get some additional information. So we will share the content, so you don't need to take notes. And again, we can follow up individually or as a group on anything which is specific. If there's anything of particular interest, I can arrange demonstrations and such forward. So if we just talk about the overall strategy, I think it's important to understand that e-business suite is not dead. Obviously, Oracle is a cloud-first organization, but we have many tens of thousands of customers across the globe still operating our on-premise applications, and particularly Business Suite, which is still our premier product line. We've got a couple of names on the sheet here. Again, you can just see the shape and size of some of those organizations. And again, specifically for the attendees here today, one good example is the UK NHS. 1.7 million people running EBS payroll. So again, whilst we have the cloud product, that shift to the cloud, is absolutely the right thing for a lot of customers, but it's about the timing. So again, we've still got a lot of investment within the product. And similarly, we've got a lot of customers which are expanding. So again, the UK NHS, they've expanded because of things like COVID-19. We've taken on a lot of, temporary healthcare workers in the UK, where I'm residing at the moment. And again, they're expanding their payroll to meet those contingent workers, as well as increasing their workforce to 2.2 million. So again, significant investment in the product from our customers, which we appreciate. So hence, we're investing in the product as well. So when we look at how we decide what we build into the product, the Oracle strategy over the last few years has really been around, the functional innovation, changing the UI. We all acknowledge that historically, it was modern for its time, but perhaps hasn't kept up with some of the more cloud native products which have been developed. So again, it's working on, how you can enable users with tablet devices, mobile phone devices, take action on the move rather than sit in front of a desk all the time. And also operational efficiencies, decluttering screens, back-end functional enhancements, just, streamlining the speed of transaction, and also some of the things like online patching that you get within 12.2. But importantly, a lot of our enhancements, come from people like yourselves, the user community. So as you'll be aware, there is the ability where you can nominate great ideas. If you get a community to vote on them, Oracle Product Development review all of those on a quarterly basis, and many of them appear in the future product releases. So if you ever see any Oracle slides that I'm typically presenting, often they'll have a small light bulb in the top corner of the screen. That was a customer idea. So we really appreciate the contribution from people like yourselves, and the great work that people like these SIGs are contributing to the overall product enhancement and development. So I think it's important to understand that whilst we have historically a cadence of an annual release, there are point releases and point drops throughout those years. We've got a thing called enterprise command centers, and over the last 18 months, there's been a number of those drops, and they're almost on a quarterly basis. Also, you'll be aware of things like from an HCM perspective, the RUPs that get released on an annual basis as well. And I'm sure you're wholly aware from the 1st of June, obviously, the 12.1 and 12.2 RUPs were released. I'm not going to specifically talk about those today. I'm not sure if my colleagues will, but again, there is a link here that you'll be able to access the latest information, what's contained in those RUPs if you haven't already applied those. So again, from the roadmap perspective, I think it's important that, for customers are all in their sort of different journeys. If you are on 12.1, you need to be aware that obviously the Premier support is through until December 2021. which, you know, is 18 months away, but we all know it takes time to, you know, get your budgetary approval, mobilize a team, and actually action an upgrade. It's a break point where obviously you could consider moving to your SaaS products. You know, a lot of customers have done that, but we're seeing that on a global average, probably 70% of our customers have now moved from a 12.1 and upgraded to a 12.2. The latest release is 12.2.9, but it's critically important you understand you need to be on a 12.2.4 or higher for content that I'm producing today, because there are some technical changes that came into effect in 12.2.4. What Oracle's not doing is saying that you must be on the latest release at all times. The ethos now around this continuous innovation is we will keep producing enhancements to the product, but you choose when you deploy those enhancements. If 12.2.4 or 12.2.5, for example, gives you all the functionality that you need, you don't have to upgrade to 12.2.9. Oracle support will not push you to that. But if you see something great in 12.2.9, you think, wow, that's the thing I've been waiting for, then you can apply a cumulative patch to take you to the 12.2.9. So there are back patches for the 12.2 code line back to 12.2.4. So anybody that was on a 12.2.3, we are encouraging them to move to the 12.2.4, which is a small patch application. And say what the key thing there is that, you know, we do have this rolling 10-year support. So we say that it's the premier support now for 12.2 is through at least 2031. So it's a rolling 10 years. So we monitor how many customers are still on the 12.2 product. If in 2 years' time everybody's moved to the cloud SaaS products, then obviously they may fix that 10-year and it will shrink over time. But at the moment, it's absolutely a minimum 10-year of premier support. So when we look at the investments in the product, a quick eye chart here, lots of things across all of the product pillar areas. Obviously today we're really interested in talking about some of the HCM investments. And there's been a few of those, of which some of them are available for 12.1 customers. So we'll touch on some like the person data removal tool and how that may benefit you on the version you may be on today or the version you're moving to in the future. So at a very high level, some of the key enhancements have been around the mobile applications. I can't speak for your region, but across EMEA and particularly Western Europe, I'd say historically there's been a slow uptake of some of those applications. However, we're seeing a mind shift now where, again, because of remote working and things like that, you can take some quick action on a mobile phone as well as like tablet devices. The enterprise command centers, we're going to talk a little bit in more detail around those, so I'll just skip over that. And there's been, you know, a number of other enhancements. One of the big things with 12.2, if you haven't moved to it, is the look and feel of the product. So you can choose now how you visualize the dashboards and the screens, your home screens. If you want it to look like 12.1 for familiarity, you know, less of impact on user community and training, you can absolutely have that. But you can choose at a user level or across the system, you know, you have themes and you can customize those. So it's really about, you know, ensuring that it's, you know, tailored to you as a business. This is an example of, again, we say from 12.2.4 up to the current version, you can enable what we refer to as alt UI. So this is, you know, more graphical. It looks like the cloud app. So if you have a hybrid, you know, that transition between the on-premise and the cloud applications, you know, is fairly seamless now. So the look and feel is a lot closer. We have this, you know, sort of concept of a home page where you can have shortcuts that will take you to either an application or into a specific screen. You can also punch out to maybe your internal website that you have or a content store. You know, so again, you can just put things on there. Users can choose what they have on their homepage and they can customize it. You'll also notice that we have a lot more of these HTML type screens across all of the product pillars, where it's about, you know, visualizing data very quickly and easily, color coding, icons, you know, red arrow, that doesn't look good, maybe I need to take some action. So again, it's just, you know, informing the users perhaps in a more graphical way than the information they could have gathered by going into an inquiry screen, running a query, extracting data to Excel or some third-party tool. You can choose whether you turn this on or not. So as I say, if you want it to look like 12.1, you can also have that as well via this little cog icon here, that you can either do it at a user base or you can customize the color schemes and themes like you would perhaps if you ran Windows for the whole of your corporation. So you'll be pleased to see that things like, that's transitioned into some of the HCM products. So we get the same information between a 12.1 and a 12.2, but it just looks a little bit tidier, perhaps, a little bit refreshed and more modern. We have this concept of these icons at the top of the screen. So again, it's the same information. Some of the screens have additional information, but it's just helping you navigate to the key information that's important to you quicker. And on that theme, one of the new things we've introduced, a regular cadence of enhancements to the products is around these enterprise command centers. And I think, for me, this is going from black and white television to color television. It's long overdue within eBusiness Suite. I think we'll all acknowledge that. And it's really about this information-driven navigation, our tagline. It's being informed and being able to take action on key data. So you'll have dashboards, a set of filters. On the left-hand side of the screen, you can customize those to meet your requirements. Some graphical information. Again, you can click on these and it will redact down, act as a filter to reduce the information that's visualized. And critically, you have this details section at the bottom of the screen. And I'll talk about the benefits of that. But if, here we're talking about receivables, it would take you from a set of delinquent accounts or overdue accounts where the customer show you the invoices and can actually visualize the invoice that was sent out. So very powerful, and they're across all of the product lines. Specifically for HR, we have a command center that again allows us to visualize just all of the workers that we have, whether they're full-time employees or contingent workers. So it groups those together so we can quickly identify by geographical region or by role or by department or by skill level, how many we've got, where they're located, things like that. And again, you can click on the little icons to redact that information if you're just trying to find specific groups of people, maybe for a promotion or for some sort of talent management activity. It's very obvious where they are. So as I said, typically the way the screens work is that you've got this new UI that allows you to filter data on the left-hand side of the screen. So we call it dynamic navigation bar. Critically, we supply these dashboards. You can use them as is, or you can customize them. Again, needs a little bit of technical work perhaps to enable additional fields or charting. But if you have specific KPIs that you need to capture, you can add those in to this summarization bar here. But it's really about how you interact. So it's critical that my recommendation is that you live with the out of the box initially, understand how they work, understand where there may be a gap between what we provide and what you actually need to operate as an organization, and then you can get your IT team to add those things in very quickly and easily. But they can also, from a user perspective, enable you or empower you to add in additional key data elements or fields, or change the ordering of the data in the same way that you can with the folder functionality that you'll be familiar with. So as I say, you have this on the left-hand side of the screen, a way that you can filter, a summarization area, a charting area, and then you have the details below it. In the case here, obviously people. So you also have the facility at the top of the screen where you can do an open search. Now that could be for a specific name, in the case here Palmer. It could be for a department. So again, very flexible how you can search for people. From that, again, we can drill down, use those searches on the left-hand side. So again, I can redact the data, whether that's by joining date or by people group. Very simple. And you can build up multiples of those, as you would imagine. But again, if there's something that's custom to you, which we haven't provided within the template, you can add those on very quickly and easily. So by clicking on those filters, the visualization at the top will change. So the summarization bar, what you'll see is that will adjust to if you clicked on a particular department or a particular geographical region or collection of employees. Those number will change to say, actually, of the here it's 8,600 employees. For this particular department or this particular geography, I've got X number of full-time employees and how many contingent workers you may have. Again, you can use the tag cloud. So again, here it's just visualized very quickly that I've got lots of people and my largest group of these materials managers, and I've got 80 of them. So, it's quite handy that, we've put in the little brackets there, just a quick visualization of how many people you've got. And again, if I was to click on one of these, the screen would redraw, refresh live, and just show you all of the material managers. But again, we've got this chart here. So again, if you don't like the tag clouds, some people like them. The bigger the words, the bigger the issue, and the bigger number of transactions, the bigger number of people associated with it. You can also use the graphical chart. So again, we've given a couple of samples. You can take those, you can change them, you can adjust them, you can filter them down, that's going to give you the most value. Again, when you click on that in the details section, if you're just running core HR, it will then just show you some basic employee details. So it shows all the, sort of key attributes around what we call these like person cards, the name and address, contact information, phone, etc. If you've got things like talent installed, again, you can click on the person, it will take you through to their talent card. So I know I talked about receivables earlier, taking you to show you the actual invoice. Here we've taken that person information that we've redacted down and now gone into their actual transaction. So again, I may see that, I can understand their competencies, qualifications they have, if I'm not familiar with those, their learning paths they've undertaken. So again, you could go straight into talent, but it just allows you perhaps for a group of employees to quickly identify who they are, but perhaps you need to see whether they've undertaken some particular performance review or learning exercise as well. So that would be refreshed and visualized on these screens. It also gives you the ability where, you have these, one of the tabs we were looking at people just now is compare. And in this, really, you can select a range of users, one or two people or more. And then by comparing them, what it does is it pulls the information into a small summary screen. And it's a little bit difficult to see on here, so apologies, but it color codes the differences. And obviously where it hasn't color coded, it's because they're all sat within the organization here of HR. But again, we do this across a lot of the product pillars and these command centers. And it can be quite quick to, as I say, if you've instructed people to undertake a particular learning path and they haven't done, that can be visualized here very quickly of those that have taken it and where there's a deficiency perhaps. Quite powerful. We also have some analytics, so again, you can quickly understand where those employees are. We've given you a few examples here. You feel free to change those or manipulate them. If you don't like it, bar chart in a horizontal, you can very quickly change that to a vertical stack, visualize it that way. But again, if there's something missing that is absolutely critical to you in terms of, some sort of KPI, you could have those added on as well. Not a problem. So I guess, some of the selling points around the command centers is, it's been informed, it's been able to take action, drill into those data. You are restricted in terms of what data you can see based on your current security rules. So depending on how you set up things like role-based access control, the way your responsibility has been allocated to you, allow you to see certain sets of data. The same security roles apply to the command centers across all of the product pillars, which is obviously key. So there's no security risk there, and I'm really making a point of this because the command center sits to the side of the eBiz database. It's sits on a separate server, physical or VM, and it has a refresh of data coming out of eBusiness Suite. It's secure, but to access the front end of that data, like I say, it takes and honors the same security controls or language that you may have installed. If you have multilingual applications, again, they would also flow through onto the applications. But you must be on 12.2.4 or above. It's one of the areas that we are still developing. It's a recently new addition to the command center suite that we have, and I can't speak to what product development will build into the command centers moving forward, but certainly we recognize there's a lot of things around HR and pay that we need to build in. So expect to see a lot of additions over the coming months and year when we hopefully will have a new release of 12.2 code line. So some of the other new features that have come out in 12.2.9, and I'll just sort of go through these at quite a pace because you may or may not be aware of them, are things like you now have the ability to import time cards. Great, we've always been able to do that. The difference now, though, is that you can do that for large groups of users. You can do it on an individual basis, but you can do it for groups. Well, that's great, but you would typically only allow administrators, line managers, or authorized delegates to do that. You also have a greater ability to export that data as well if you need to, for either whether a single time card or for that group. So a little bit more flexibility there, because I know that that's been a problem when we've had to do perhaps mass updates, where there could be large vacation periods and you just need to do a bulk update. So that's been taken on board, and that was something which was driven partly by the user community, but Oracle were already recognized that as a slight challenge for a lot of customers, so it's been built into the product. We also have some additions around retrieval information around the sort of time accounting. So the retrieval dashboard has been enhanced. We have the time accounting rules for encompassed in sort of 3 areas really around sort of time accounting summary. You can analyze time over particular periods and compare time periods. So again, when we're looking for analyzing data across the time period, we visualize it again, which is quite nice, and also summarize that. So again, we can look at things like values of numbers of absences over time, premium shifts, sort of regular time versus like non-regular times. So again, you can choose one period and then you can analyze that over the prior 12 periods just to see why there's fluctuations perhaps in some of the data that you're seeing, which is, I think, quite nice. We can compare those time cards again across periods, a lot more flexibility now. So again, it's just enhancing what's already there, and I think hopefully you'll see some benefits with that. We can compare regular versus overtime versus absence versus shifts that people work versus holiday. So again, it will list out those classifications of people, where they're consuming time, specifically it may be a day, this is aggregating it from a transaction. So when you're looking at those payroll time periods, and there's some sort of variance there, it will just give you that little bit of additional insight that you can start to explore, why there could be some large fluctuations or variances. We've got some enhancements around checklists. So again, in the example here, if you're looking to onboard somebody, you probably have a set of things they have to fill in terms of sort of standard paperwork, provide references, certifications of qualifications, whatever it may be. You can build in some now additional rules so that you can template it a lot easier and roll that out. But if you have additional things that you want to, so historically the challenge was always that a particular task, if you wanted to add additional steps in there, you had to do it on a one-by-one basis. Now you have the ability to take that as a template and apply that to, in the case here, a checklist of new hires. So if we said, well, actually there's now a regulation that we need to, I don't know, capture people's driving licenses, for example, you can now apply that if you've got new hire or rehire, hire a contingent worker, hire a person in location X. Historically, you would have gone into every one of those and make those updates to say, now I need to capture this additional thing. Now we have the ability where we can apply that one additional requirement across all of those checklists. So again, that's an example of an operational efficiency which Oracle's introduced, which I think is great. Similarly, and myself, we've just been through our sort of, we started our new fiscal year, so we go through our immersion training and various onboarding certifications. So you now have the ability where, again, within learning, you can add, the courses that a learner must take and those that, can be taken. So you may say, well, actually, if you just take the basic training, you get a basic proficiency. But there's these optional additional activities which you could undertake, which may give you a higher level of certification. And that could be, related to a specific job role that you have to perform, or just, a compliance training aspect, for health and safety, things like that. So again, we've got the greater flexibility where you can, specify, what is mandatory, what are those voluntary courses that, a learner could decide to undertake at their discretion. One of the things which has been introduced a little while ago and absolutely is available for 12.1 is the Person Data Removal Tool, or DRT. Now, this was in part driven by things like GDPR compliance across Europe, but we see it being used across the globe, where there's a lot more requests coming in for users to have that right to remove their data. So what we use is some of our archiving technology and some of our proprietary technology to allow you to identify a cohort of people and then take action on them. We obviously do the referential integrity checks to ensure they're not associated with any particular transactions, and then we can remove them sympathetically from the system. And what I mean by that is we can obfuscate their data, recognizing that the sensitive data around name, address, contact information, banking information. It could be in the application for expenses, for example. So we can scramble that data, we can hide that data, but we don't break the data structures that would impede you to do any sort of annual reports or audit compliance checks that may be undertaken. So again, it is something which is available for 12.1.3 customers as well as 12.2 customers. It's free of charge. If you do have things like GDPR compliance, then it's something which will enhance, no doubt, what you're doing today. But interestingly, I find that a lot of customers are unaware of this. So again, great that I'm able to sort of just share that with you a little bit today. Again, I just want to briefly touch on things like some of our additional resources. We have a dedicated website. I'm sure you're aware of it, but if you just put oracle.com, you get a lot of information around our fantastic cloud products. But we have a dedicated site for eBusiness Suite, as we do for all of the on-premise product lines. Now, the great thing on that site is it's gone through a refresh in the last, again, sort of 12, 18 months. You can get information on the latest sort of products, data sheets and things like that, all the latest announcements. There's videos that come direct from our development team, our support team. So there's a lot of free content there, and I'll touch on that a bit more in a moment. But there's a lot of presentations that you can share, widely in terms of just short product announcements, 1 or 2 pages talking about enhancements in a particular area, but also our overall strategy. So again, I've just given you a very short overview of some of the enhancements within the HCM area. But again, if you wanted to see across all product pillars, there's plenty of content on there, video-based as well as documented slides and full-blown implementation manuals, etc. you can access. The key thing that I just really want to sort of emphasize is, those roadmaps are out there. There's the latest announcements. I would encourage you to watch them. There's a lot of short versions, and then there's, it's condensed down to sort of 10, 15 minutes, a bit like we're doing today. And then there's the more in-depth, detailed ones as well that you can view that's alongside the announcements. Now, the critical thing, though, is that, and it surprises me, but not really, because I've been in the Oracle space for 30 years and as an end user like yourself, so getting information out of Oracle is not always the easiest thing. I think we'll all agree that, because there's so much content out there. But we do have a lot of information around the product documentation and training. So there's lots of information that if you are on 12.1 and you're looking to go to 12.2, it encourages you to look at around our information center on My Oracle Support. The release content documents, critically, are written in business speak. So they're not the technical documents of the benefits of upgrading from one version to another. They talk about things like we've touched on briefly today. In a particular version, you could only upload, an individual could upload a time card, but you couldn't upload en masse. So it will explain the limitations or restrictions you may have had in a prior release, but critically it will talk about the benefits and the enhancement from a business process perspective, and from an operational perspective of that new feature in 12.2, 12.4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whenever the enhancement came out. Complementing that, we have a lot of what we refer to as these transfer of information videos. They're free online videos. They're often done by our product development teams. Again, some of them come from our support teams, or they may come from people like myself within our solution engineering group. So they are very good at explaining either at a high level what is HCM, what is payroll, What are the new features within payroll in 12.2.9 at a detail level? What's included in the latest RUP? So again, I would encourage you to go and look at some of those. A lot of information. If you have somebody that's, you know, if you think back to being new to the role that you're currently perhaps sitting, and you may have changed slightly, you know, so you can find a lot of information which helps you understand how you would use the e-business suite and the e-business product set, and the broader products that we have with on-premise applications, you know, in your new role, whether you're a data entry clerk or you're now in a supervisor or manager role. So again, there's a lot of information there at different levels, and again, you can search by different versions of the applications as well. The poorly named, in my personal opinion, thing which, you know, I want to end with really is what we refer to these learning subscriptions. So again, there's lots of free video out there. There's about 500 videos, again, pitched at different levels, supporting these transfer of information, which are a little bit more technical perhaps. So again, a lot of high-level content across all of the product pillars. Now, it does say subscription, and that's the bit that puts everybody off. There are over 500 free videos on there. But complementing that, if you need formal certification, onboarding of somebody, we also have a lot of, you know, guided learning paths that you can do remotely, or, you know, when lockdown allows, classroom-based training as well. So again, there's a lot of information there. Don't feel you can't click on it, that Oracle will charge you straight away. That's certainly not the case. It's very obvious what's free and what isn't, and there's even a little button that you can tick to say, only show me the free content. Surprisingly, a lot of customers aren't aware of it. So again, apologies if you are aware, but hopefully there may be some people that get some value out of it. So appreciate we've gone through that at quite a pace today. It was really just to give you a very quick update, make you aware that the applications are not dead. Oracle is still investing in them heavily across all of the on-premise product lines. We absolutely encourage customers to consider hybrid, but hybrid when it makes sense for you, or full SaaS when it makes sense for you. And certainly the group I sit within Applications Unlimited, and I know some of my colleagues are on the call as well today, you know, we're here to support you in region. I'm based in the UK. I cover all of EMEA. I'm currently focused on Western Europe, but absolutely I'm still working with some significant brands like we've got on the call today, and I look forward to working with you in the future. So Samsonet, that's all I had to cover today. I'm happy to take some questions, or we can park those, whatever works for you really.
I think if there's questions with regards to what you covered, they can ask the questions now. And once we're done with the questions around your area, then Guyan can start his presentation.
Sure. Or maybe I'll ask the audience a question. Command centers, does that seem interesting? Does it seem like an innovation? Are you aware of them? Have you seen them in a detailed context? Have you had a live demo of them? Lots of questions there, just to start some conversation perhaps. Oh, I can't believe people are being shy. Oh, no problem. Well, we, like I say, we are here to support you guys. So, you know, we can share information with you. We can do one-on-one demonstrations. You know, feel free to reach out to us. Okay, so we've got a couple of things in the chat. Looks interesting. Great. That's good to hear. I'll pass that back to the development team. And I was talking with the Cliff Godwin, who was on one of the prior slides. He's our SVP for eBusiness Suite product development yesterday. And again, there's a lot of exciting things coming out in future releases that I can't share today. But certainly, I think from an HR perspective, you know, it's perhaps not had as much investment as some of the other areas historically. That's absolutely recognised. So again, yeah, we are working behind the scenes to try and rectify that. Okay. All right, well, I will distribute the slides. That's allowed in Deep Investment Oracle. Perfect. So I would just read the slides from Jeanette, and then I don't know how you share them, but if there's any additional specific content that you require, feel free to come back to me, and obviously we're recording this and that can be shared. So at this stage, I will stop sharing. Oops. Okay.
Thank you, Terry. Really appreciate your help and your presentation. It's really interesting stuff and good to know that ERP is evolving like this. I will distribute your slides on the SIAUG web mail that we've got to all the participants, and then we can hand over to Guyan.
Great, thank you everybody.
Thanks, Sansonet. I'm just going to share my screen. One moment, please. Okay, thanks, Terry. Thanks, Sansonet. And so basically, I will be going through the latest enhancement requests that have been released on 1st of June, right, specific to South Africa. And then we'll have a brief overview of legislative amendments that have been delivered from 1 March 2020 until 21st of June 2020. That was the last patch that was released. Okay. Okay, so firstly, looking at the enhancement requests, right? So with regards to the enhancements requests, this is a repeat of what was included in the tax year end seminar slides, right? So if you have gone through that, the same thing is repeated here, right? So firstly, the enhancement requests are now available in release 12.2. The features are not available in 12.1. The first enhancement request specific to South Africa was the tax year end data validation report. That was only available in PDF format, but the application has now been amended such that the tax year end data validation report is now available in Excel format. So it makes it a little bit easier for you to distribute it to different departments, etc. Okay, then the tax explanation report. So the various tax methodologies used by the application in calculating tax are explained in the South African supplement, as well as the notes contained in MOS, right? So users requested the ability to generate a report using the application that explains how tax was calculated for a period for a particular assignment, right? In this regard, the tax explanation report was developed. Okay, so those were the two specific enhancements for South Africa. Now we'll move on to the legislative amendments, right? So firstly, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, various amendments to legislation have been made or proposed, right? The impact thereof was that the number of patches released tax year to date compared to last tax year is substantially more, okay? The following legislative amendments and proposals were delivered between 1 March 2020 and 21 June 2020. So firstly, you'll see that there was 3 amendments to the interest rate, an amendment to the COIDA limit, that's standard, right? Then we've got the draft disaster management tax relief bill that had an impact on the employment tax incentive. And we have the source codes introduced by the BRS versions 19.0 to 19.3. And then lastly, donations to COVID-19 Solidarity Fund. Okay, so those were the patches, and the release dates are also included there. Okay. Firstly, we look at the official rate of interest, right? The official rate of interest is defined as the repo rate plus 1 percentage point. Between 1 April and 1 June 2020, the repo rate was amended 3 times, right? So on the 1st of April, the repo rate dropped by 1 percentage point from 7.25 to 6.25%. 1 May, a further 1% from 6.25 to 5.25. And then effective 1 June, it moved downwards by 0.5 percentage point from 5.25% to 4.75%. Right? The global values that store, the global value that stores the official rate of interest was amended each time the rate was changed. Okay. Then we have the other standard change, which was the COIDA limit increase, right? That was effective 1 March 2020. Okay. The Minister of Labour announced that effective 1 March 2020, the maximum amount of earnings for purposes of COIDA had increased to 484,200. In this regard, the global value that stores the maximum amount of earnings for purposes of COIDA was also amended effective 1 March 2020. Okay. Draft Disaster Management Tax Relief Bill, impact on the employment tax incentive. Okay, firstly, to start off with the draft disaster management tax relief bill, we all know that it went through various versions, right? So 1st of April, we had version 1, 1st of May, we had version 2, and then during May, we also had a 3rd version, right? So this specific patch looked at the 1st version, right? So the draft disaster management tax relief bill released on 1 April 2020 for public comment proposed various amendments to the Employment Tax Incentive Act, right? It was proposed that the ETI program be expanded for a limited period of 4 months, commencing on 1 April 2020. In this regard, the application was amended to cater for the change in calculation of normal ETI per month during the period 1 April 2020 to 31 July 2020. Also, it introduced the extended ETI that could now be claimed for employees who earned remuneration less than 6,500 Rand per month and who had satisfied other requirements, but who would have otherwise been disqualified because they were employed prior to 1 October 2013, age, or for which the normal ETI had already been claimed for 24 months. New SARS codes introduced by the SARS BRS version 19.0 to 19.3. So there were actually 4 versions, right? We'll talk about the 4th version shortly. Okay, so BRS versions 19.0 to 19.3 introduced the following new codes that needed to be considered for purposes of the application. Firstly, there was annuity from a Provident or Provident Preservation Fund, COVID-19 TERS allowance, COVID-19 donation, and then the Section 10102 exemption that was taken into account by the employer for pay-as-you-earn purposes. The application was amended to cater for these new reporting codes. Please note that the amendments for purposes of reporting will be delivered later, right? A few days ago, on the 18th of June 2020, SARS released an amended version of the BRS, version 19.4. Version 19.4 amended certain requirements, including substantially amending the name and description of Code 3724. The amended version of the BRS is in the process of being reviewed, right? However, specifically speaking about Code 3724, version up until 19.3 of the BRS made reference to Code 3724. The name and description was specifically for the temporary employer-employee release service allowance, right? It appears based on the latest version of the BRS 19.4 that the TERS allowance need no longer be disclosed, right? They've actually amended the name and description of Code 3724 such that they specifically state that the TERS allowance must not be included under that code, right? However, in terms of the patch that was released in May, pre this new version of the BRS, the patch released in May made reference to 3724, named as the TERS allowance. It delivered secondary classifications and balances that were specifically named TERS allowance, right? So users should not link their TERS allowance elements to the secondary classifications that have been delivered. As I mentioned, we will be changing, we're in the process of reviewing it so that to determine what changes need to be made. Okay, donations to the COVID-19 Solidarity Fund. The draft Disaster Management Tax Relief Admin Bill proposed the following with regards to donations to the COVID-19 Solidarity Fund. An employer may deduct from remuneration so much of a donation to the Solidarity Fund made by the employer on behalf of the employee, either during a period of 3 months commencing on or between 1 April and 1 July. The maximum amount that can be deducted is 33.33% of the remuneration per month after deducting allowable contributions to pension, provident, or retirement annuity funds, and for which the employer will be issued a receipt reflecting such donation from the fund. Or during a period of 6 months commencing on 1 April 2020, and the maximum amount, if using the 6 months, is 16.66% of monthly remuneration after deducting pension, provident, or retirement annuity fund contributions, right? And also a receipt needs to be issued. In terms of this proposal, the maximum allowable deduction is based on the monthly remuneration after deducting allowable contributions to pension, provident, or retirement annuity funds, right? Now, specifically talking to this proposal, right? And our interpretation of the proposal was that the 33.33% limitation can be applied for a maximum of 3 months between 1 April and 1 July, and that the 16.66% limitation could only apply for 6 months commencing on 1 April. The patch was developed based on this interpretation, right? However, it appears that due to the wording of the proposal, various interpretations can be drawn, and it is SAR's view that the proposal has a wider meaning than initially thought. It is SAR's view that the 33.33% limitation can be applied for a maximum of 3 months in any period between 1 April and 30 September 2020. That is, if the deduction was not applied for the period 1 April to 1 July, then the 33.33% limitation can be applied from July to September. Right? As we now have this in writing from SARS, we are working on an amendment patch that will be released soon. Okay, and that's all for the legislative amendments that have been delivered up until the 21st of June 2020. As I mentioned, there's still a lot going on, lots of development, other legislative patches coming as well. Okay. So I'd like to open the floor to any questions. Anything from anybody in relation to, because as I mentioned, there's a lot going on as a result of COVID-19, and legislation has been lots proposed, lots changed, and often at times everything going on in the payroll world is extremely hectic at the moment with all these changes coming through. But yeah, so if you have any questions, please do ask. I will try and answer them to the best of my ability. Okay, so I'm assuming that there's no questions. So I will send the slides through to Sansonet, and she will then distribute it to the SIG members. Thank you all for your time. Sansonet, I'll hand back to you then. Thank you.
Guy, thank you so much for your time. It's really appreciated. You and Terry, just a big thanks from all of us from the SIUG, and it was really nice to meet you, Terry, and I hope you have a lovely day and a wonderful weekend, and thank you for everybody that joined our session, and I hope it was insightful and interesting, and we'll have another session in a month's time on Blitz reports with Andy, and I hope you can all join again. And yeah, have a lovely weekend. Thanks for everything, and thank you for everybody that joined. Bye.
Thanks, Antoinette. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.